He was a cold billionaire. She was a virgin waitress. One wild night changed everything, because now she's having his baby. Lucas Monroe had everything people thought they wanted. Wealth beyond imagination, a name whispered with respect in corporate circles, and the kind of face that stopped conversations mid-sentence. But what no one knew was that behind those sharp suits and quiet smirks was a man who hadn't truly felt anything in years. He was 35, unmarried by choice, emotionally guarded by design. His life was made of calculated moves and clean escapes. People came and went. No one ever stayed. That night, after his company's lavish corporate celebration at the Sapphire Grand Hotel in Chicago, Lucas didn't go upstairs to his penthouse suite like usual. Instead, something stirred inside him, a restlessness he couldn't name. So he walked into the hotel's dimly lit lounge, a place where jazz hummed low and strangers stayed strangers. He slid into a private booth in the corner and ordered his usual, neat whiskey, no ice, no conversation. And then he saw her. She wasn't dressed like the other women at the hotel. No diamonds, no heels that clicked with intention. She wore simple black flats and a server's dress, slightly wrinkled after a long shift. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a loose bun, a few strands falling to frame her soft face. She looked like she didn't belong. And yet, she was the most magnetic person in the room. Ella Dawson had just clocked out from the banquet floor. She was cutting through the lounge to reach the employee elevator when her gaze accidentally met his. She froze. Lucas didn't look away. Something passed between them in that stillness, a curiosity, a pull, an invisible thread. "Sit," he said, his voice smooth but quiet, more of a request than a command. She hesitated. Her hands were still trembling from carrying trays all evening. "I'm not supposed to be here," she replied. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Maybe just for a minute." Against her better judgment, she sat. Up close, Lucas was almost too handsome to be real. Sharp jawline, dark eyes, and a confidence that made people forget their own names. Ella didn't. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ella," she replied. "And you?" "Lucas." He didn't add his last name. But she recognized him a few minutes later, her eyes widening just slightly when he mentioned Monroe Holdings. She blinked, her lips parting. "You're Lucas Monroe?" she asked. He nodded. "I waited on your table earlier," she said. "Didn't expect to end the night here." "Neither did I." They talked. The minutes turned to an hour, then two. He asked about her life, and she answered with honesty, not flattery. She grew up in a small Illinois town, raised by her grandmother after her mom left and her dad disappeared. She'd moved to the city with $200 and a suitcase full of secondhand dreams. Worked as a waitress by night, receptionist by day. But her true love was writing. She loved people, watching them, studying them. She said she wanted to write about real life, not fairy tales. Lucas listened. Really listened. For the first time in years. She didn't try to impress him. She didn't lean in too close or laugh too loud. She just was. And that was more than enough. "You're not what I expected," he said. She smiled softly. "Neither are you." He asked her what made her happiest. She said bookstores, thunderstorms, and the sound of laughter from people who forgot the world for a minute. She asked him what made him happiest, and for a long moment he didn't know what to say. "I don't think I've thought about that in a while," he finally admitted. The conversation wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real, electric. And in that quiet booth, something unexpected began to bloom. Not lust, not hunger, connection. They were two people from two different worlds, sitting on the same edge of something dangerous and beautiful. And neither of them wanted the night to end. Lucas found himself leaning closer without meaning to. His fingers grazed hers over the table. Her breath caught, but she didn't pull away. "I don't usually do this," she whispered. "Neither do I," he replied. And both of them, for the first time in their very different lives, meant every word. The clock inside the hotel lobby glowed close to midnight as Lucas Monroe walked beside Ella Dawson through the softly lit corridor toward the staff parking lot. They didn't talk much as they walked. The quiet was full, not awkward but heavy with something new, something unspoken. Lucas had never felt nervous around a woman before. But this girl, this small-town waitress with big, honest eyes and a heart that didn't care about last names, made his chest tighten in a way no one else ever had. When they reached the back doors that led to the cold, open lot, he stopped. She turned to him, her purse clutched to her side. "Thanks for walking me." He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "Do you want to come upstairs?" Ella's breath caught. She stared at him, not with suspicion or flirtation, but with thought, care. Lucas held up a hand quickly. "No pressure. You can say no. I don't want the night to end. Not yet." She looked down, then back up at him. Her eyes searched his face like she was looking for cracks. She found none, only truth. After a pause that stretched forever, she nodded. "Okay." They took the private elevator. Neither spoke, but the air was thick with electricity, with nerves and excitement, and something that neither of them dared name yet. Inside the penthouse suite, Lucas unlocked the door and stepped back to let her in first. She walked slowly, wide-eyed at the modern space, all glass and elegance. But she didn't ask questions. She wasn't impressed by the luxury. She was focused on him. He poured her a glass of water, not wine, no expectations, just presence. She took it with a small thank you. And then came the silence, the kind that demands a choice. Lucas stepped closer, slow and careful. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "You won't," she whispered. But when he leaned in, she stopped him with a soft hand to his chest. "Lucas, I've never done this before." His brows lifted, surprised, but only for a second. "Never?" She shook her head. "I've kissed, I've been close. But no, not this. Not really." He should have backed away. He should have ended the night. That would have been the easy thing, the clean thing. But instead, he cupped her cheek gently and said, "Then we'll go slow. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for." Her eyes glistened, not with fear, but with emotion, that kind of compassion. She didn't expect it from a man like him. Their lips met gently, not hungry, not rushed, just warm, honest. He led her to the bedroom, hand in hand. There was no rush to undress. Every button, every soft graze of skin felt like a trust fall, a conversation without words. When she trembled, he paused and looked into her eyes. "Are you okay?" She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of being seen. Lucas kissed the tear away. Their bodies met like waves, tentative at first, then deeper, slower, more connected than anything he'd ever known. It wasn't sex, it wasn't lust. It was something sacred. He whispered her name like a prayer. She held on to him like she'd been waiting all her life to be touched this way. Afterward, they lay tangled in white sheets, hearts pounding. Her head rested on his chest, and his fingers traced soft circles on her back. Neither of them wanted to sleep. But sleep found them, quietly. And for the first time in over a decade, Lucas Monroe fell asleep with someone in his arms. And for once, he didn't want her to be gone by morning. When the sun spilled into the room the next day, Ella stirred first. She turned, expecting the usual coldness that came after intimacy. Instead, Lucas stood at the kitchen counter, shirtless, flipping pancakes like he'd done it 100 times. "You cook?" she teased, wrapping a sheet around her. "Only for women who make me forget I'm a billionaire." She laughed, and it was music. They ate together, and she told him stories of her childhood. He listened like it mattered. Then, as she stood by the door to leave, he handed her a folded slip of paper. "My number," he said. "Call me?" She looked at it, then at him, a long pause. "Let's just remember this as something good," she said. "No pressure, no expectations." He nodded, though part of him ached. And then, just like that, Ella walked out of the suite. No promises, no goodbyes, just the ghost of a night that didn't feel casual at all. And as the door closed, Lucas felt something unfamiliar rising in his chest. Regret, because deep down he knew that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. 5 weeks had passed, 41 days to be exact. But Lucas Monroe had counted every single one. In those 5 weeks, he had closed 3 major deals, fired 2 executives, and launched a new investment branch overseas. To the outside world, he was as sharp and focused as ever. But inside he was distracted. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart leapt. Every unknown number made him pause. Every shadow in a crowd made him wonder. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. And she certainly hadn't walked through any of the revolving glass doors of Monroe Holdings. He told himself it had been just one night. He told himself she probably moved on, that it didn't mean anything. But the lies didn't quiet the way her laughter still echoed in his mind, or how her eyes haunted his dreams, or how that night, just one night, felt more real than most of his relationships put together. Then came that Monday morning. The sky outside was unusually bright, and Lucas sat at his massive glass desk, scanning through a contract worth $120 million. "Sir?" His assistant's voice broke the silence, confused and unsure. Lucas didn't look up. "What is it?" "There's a young woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Says her name is Ella Dawson." His head snapped up so fast the paper nearly tore in his hand. "Ella?" he repeated, almost in disbelief. He stood before he knew what he was doing. "Send her in." The door opened slowly. There she was. Ella stood in the doorway in jeans and a plain green blouse, her hair loose, her eyes more tired than he remembered. She looked smaller somehow, but stronger, like someone carrying more than just herself. "Hi," she said softly. Lucas stepped around his desk, every step echoing. "Ella, are you okay?" She nodded, though her hands trembled as she reached into her purse and clutched something. Then she looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lucas, I'm pregnant." Time slowed. His breath caught. The room, once full of sunlight and glass and power, shrank into a single sentence. I'm pregnant." He stared at her, his mind racing. He'd faced hostile takeovers, lawsuits that could destroy empires, international pressure, corporate sabotage. But nothing had ever knocked the air out of his lungs like this. He didn't speak, so she did. "I'm not here for money," she said quickly, stepping back like she expected him to yell. "I don't want anything from you. I thought you should know. That night, it wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it did, and now this." She gestured to her stomach, still flat beneath the blouse. "Now this means everything." Lucas blinked. Something shifted behind his eyes. "I'll raise the baby alone if I have to," she added, swallowing. "I'm not here to mess up your life." But her voice cracked on the last word, like she was afraid that was exactly what she had done. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "You think this messes up my life?" She flinched, almost imperceptibly. "I know it wasn't planned, and we're from different worlds, Lucas. I don't expect anything. I just—" "Stop," he said gently. She looked up. Lucas stared at her, really stared. Not like a man evaluating a risk, but like someone standing at a cliff, choosing whether to fall or fly. "I don't care that it wasn't planned," he said. "I care that it's you, that it's ours." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Not yet." "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, "but I know I don't want you to go through this alone." He reached out and took her hand, gently, as if she might disappear again. "Let me be there. For you. For the baby. For whatever this is becoming." She looked at their hands, her thumb brushing his. "Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The room was silent again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of questions, of emotions, of a future neither of them saw coming. Lucas Monroe, powerful, detached, untouchable, had just found himself in the middle of a story he couldn't control. And for once, he didn't want to. Lucas Monroe had never planned on fatherhood, but after hearing the words, "I'm pregnant," from Ella's lips, something in him had shifted, like a long-frozen part of his soul had begun to thaw. From that moment on, he made a quiet vow. He would show up. For her. For the baby. For whatever it meant to build something real. He didn't try to control her, but he was there, at every doctor's appointment, every checkup. He drove her when she was too tired to take the bus. He bought prenatal vitamins and healthy groceries without her asking. He found her a better apartment, safe, quiet, with a small nursery already painted in soft yellows. And it wasn't perfect, because love, even the real kind, doesn't erase the lines drawn by society. Ella had spent her life working for everything. Her shoes had walked long shifts in cheap restaurants. Her hands had washed dishes, flipped pages in used books, folded thrift store baby clothes with quiet hope. And suddenly she was in his world, of penthouses and private jets, of crystal champagne and $1,000 suits. She didn't want it. She wanted him. But Lucas's world didn't always want her. The first time she attended a dinner with him, she wore a simple navy dress she'd borrowed from a friend. She smiled politely, spoke when spoken to, and held her water glass like it might break in her hands. The women at the table looked her over like she was a typo in a luxury magazine. One of Lucas's friends, a venture capitalist with too many teeth and too little soul, leaned over and said, "So, where exactly did he find you? Craigslist or a diner?" Lucas froze. Ella turned pale. He grabbed her hand under the table and squeezed. She squeezed back but didn't say a word. Later, when they got into the car, she didn't cry, but her silence was louder than screaming. "I don't belong there," she finally said. "They don't belong near you," Lucas replied, jaw tight. But it wasn't just strangers. Lucas's family, especially his father, saw Ella as a stain on the Monroe legacy. His mother was colder. "She's sweet," she said once over brunch, "but temporary, right? These things don't usually last." Lucas had walked out of that meal. He didn't speak to them for 2 weeks. He didn't care about the whispers. But Ella did. Because she wasn't used to being judged by people who didn't know her. Because she knew what it meant to be invisible. And now, suddenly she was too visible, but only as a headline, a stereotype, a trap. She hated it. One night, after a particularly rough evening at one of Lucas's charity galas, Ella broke. They returned to his place. She kicked off her heels and paced the marble floors, her voice shaking with exhaustion. "I'm not your project, Lucas. I'm not some cause to make you feel noble or generous. I don't want to be a Cinderella story in the gossip columns." Lucas reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "I don't fit in your world," she whispered, "and I'm tired of pretending I do." He stood there, helpless, the man who always had the answer suddenly at a loss. "I'm not ashamed of you," he said. "I'm proud of you." "I know," she replied, "but that doesn't change how they see me." There was a long silence between them. Then, softly, she said the words that cut deeper than anything else. "I don't want to be your burden. I just want our child to grow up loved." Lucas stepped forward, emotion cracking in his voice. "You are not a burden. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Both of you are." She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment the pain melted. He wrapped his arms around her, resting his hand on the small curve of her belly. "I can't promise the world will stop judging, but I can promise I'll never stop fighting for you. For us." They stood there in silence, holding each other. Two people from different planets. But in that moment, they were home. Because love wasn't meant to be easy. It was meant to be true. Lucas had spent his life making decisions with his head. He had built empires, outsmarted rivals, and turned every setback into a stepping stone. His instincts were razor sharp, his strategies ruthless, his image untouchable. But no boardroom deal had ever left his heart aching the way she did. It had been days since Ella told him she needed space, that she felt overwhelmed, unfit for the spotlight his life demanded. She didn't want to disappear, but she also didn't want to lose herself just to be in his world. He hadn't slept properly since. He missed her voice, her quiet laughter, the softness of her touch, the way her hand rested protectively over her belly when she thought no one was watching. And above all, he realized something frightening and beautiful at once. He wasn't just attached to the idea of being a father. He was in love with her. Not for her sweetness, not for the story, but for her fire, her truth, her soul. So that night, Lucas didn't send a driver. He didn't show up in a tailored suit or call ahead with a prepared speech. He went alone, in jeans, a hoodie, and with a paper bag of takeout in one hand and a small bundle of grocery store flowers in the other. He stood outside her modest apartment and knocked. Not loud, just enough. Ella opened the door, wearing leggings and an oversized sweater. Her hair was in a messy bun. She blinked in surprise. "Lucas?" He lifted the food. "You still like chicken stir-fry, right?" She blinked again, then stepped back silently, letting him in. The living room was warm and quiet. A small stack of baby books sat on the end table. Her laptop was open with a blank page on the screen, the blinking cursor waiting for words. He set the food on the coffee table and turned to her, his voice soft and raw. "I'm not asking you to fit into my world, Ella," he said. "I'm asking if I can fit into yours." Her breath caught. "I've spent my life surrounded by people who wear masks, people who want something from me. But you looked right through all that. You made me feel human, real, and I don't want a future without that." Her arms crossed gently over her chest, but not defensively. She was listening. Her eyes were already glistening. "I know I messed up," he continued. "I should have protected you better. From them, from the pressure. But I'm here now. Not as Lucas Monroe the billionaire, just as a man who's in love with you, who wants to build something real. With you. With our child." Tears slipped quietly down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "You'd give all that up, your reputation, your empire, just to be here?" He stepped closer, gently setting the flowers on the couch before reaching for her hands. "I'm not giving anything up," he said. "I'm finally choosing something that matters." She melted into his arms. He wrapped her tight against his chest, feeling the small curve of her belly between them. It wasn't just a hug. It was an answer. And when their lips met again, it wasn't the first kiss of strangers. It was the first kiss of something whole, something chosen. He held her face with both hands, kissing her slowly, like they had all the time in the world. She didn't hold back this time. Her fingers curled into his hair, pulling him closer, matching the passion and certainty in his kiss. He whispered her name between breaths, and she whispered his. They didn't speak of the past. They didn't make plans for the future. They just let love answer everything silence couldn't. Later, under soft covers in the hush of her bedroom, they made love again. But this time it was different. Not tender because of fear, but because of choice. Not slow because of nerves, but because of reverence. It was two souls choosing each other fully, finally, completely. Lucas kissed every inch of her like she was his entire world. And when she reached up to touch his cheek, her voice broke. "I didn't think I'd ever feel safe like this again." He kissed her forehead, heart pounding. "You'll never have to feel unsafe again, not while I'm breathing." They fell asleep wrapped around each other. No more distance, no more doubt. In a simple apartment in a city too big for fairy tales, they had found something rare. A love that wasn't perfect, but was real. And real love, they both knew now, was the kind worth fighting for. Spring arrived softly, as if nature itself had been holding its breath, waiting for the right moment to bloom. And on a golden April morning, as sunlight filtered through Ella's hospital window, a cry rang out, clear, strong, and full of life. Their daughter, Grace Monroe, was born at 7:04 a.m., 7 pounds even, a full head of dark hair. Lucas held her first. And for the first time in his life, the man who had held billion-dollar contracts and corporate power in the palms of his hands trembled. Not from fear, but from awe. "How does something this small carry so much meaning?" he whispered. Ella, exhausted and radiant, reached out and touched his arm. "Because love doesn't need to be loud to be powerful." He looked from the baby to her, and something inside him, something hidden and weathered, healed. 2 months later, Lucas and Ella stood under a wooden archway in a countryside vineyard. Rows of blooming wildflowers framed the aisle. There were no cameras, no headlines, no business partners making deals behind champagne glasses. Just friends. Family, chosen, not forced. People who believed in love the way they did. Ella wore a soft ivory dress. Nothing flashy. Grace, only 8 weeks old, slept peacefully in the arms of Lucas's sister, one of the few in his family who had embraced Ella from day one. When Lucas said, "I do," his voice cracked. Not from nerves, from truth. He hadn't just found a wife, he had found home. After the wedding, they did something no one expected. Lucas stepped down. He didn't disappear, but he walked away from boardrooms that had once defined him. Instead, he and Ella poured their energy into a project born from their pain, their love, and their shared promise to change the world they'd once been judged by. They called it Second Chance, a non-profit aimed at young single mothers, high school dropouts, people who had been cast aside for the color of their skin, the weight of their wallets, or the stories they carried in silence. They offered housing, education, job placement, and emotional support. But more than anything, they offered dignity. Lucas spoke at business forums, urging CEOs to rewrite hiring policies and stop turning resumes into judgment sheets. He invested in communities that had been ignored. He used his name not to build walls, but to open doors. Ella found her voice in another way. She wrote, late at night, with Grace asleep in a bassinet beside her, she typed the story of her journey, of love that surprised her, of motherhood that remade her, of kindness that changed a man raised in coldness. Her book, Soft Power, A Mother's Love Story, became a bestseller. It wasn't loud, it wasn't scandalous, it was real. Women read it in hospitals, shelters, and quiet corners of hope. And men, especially those taught not to feel, found pieces of themselves in Lucas's journey. They didn't just fall in love. They became love, a force that rippled outward, a seed planted in the soil of one wild night, now growing roots across the country. And every so often, when reporters or old friends asked Lucas about that night when it all began, he would smile. That quiet, honest smile only Ella and Grace truly understood. I used to think that night was just a moment, he would say, just a detour. Then he'd look over at his wife. Still Ella, still herself, strong and unpolished and real, and their daughter, chasing butterflies with muddy shoes and messy hair. That night, he'd say, gave me everything I didn't know I needed. A partner, a family, a reason. A love that didn't just change him, but changed how others loved, how others forgave, how others believed. Because in a world full of prejudice, pressure, and pain, they proved that sometimes the most unexpected moments, one night, one choice, one connection, can be the very beginning of everything beautiful.